First item, Sederunt and Apologies. Claire?
Thank you, Chairman. 2 apologies this morning from Councillor Carson and Councillor Nicol. Currently 15 members present.
Yep. Have we any declarations of interest? No. Minute of the meeting of 14th April. Thank you. Item 4 is the Director's End of Year Assessment of Business Plan Performance. There's an extra paper being issued which covers page 15 and these are corrected figures for page 15 and 16. Okay, on item 4, this gives the overall picture of community customer services budget for the current financial year 2015-16. As members are aware, in response to changes agreed through the shape of the Council, the scope of service within community and customer services will alter, with some transferring into New Communities Department and others transferring out. So for clarity, the document 4 members relates to the existing services within the CCS. Appendix 2 provides members with details of the activity-based budgeting information, and this includes details of key outputs for services, benchmarking and staffing details. And just ask the Director if he wants to give a brief overview.
Thank you, Chairman. Morning, members. As members appreciate, the purpose of ABB is in fact to provide more detailed information about how the Council spends its money, and obviously in this case today, members, it's how Community and Customer Service spends its money. Paragraph 3.5 of the covering report provides a breakdown of the service areas which come under Community and Customer Service. This year's version does follow a similar format as previous years, but I'm sure members will welcome the approach we are going to be taking in the future is to integrate the ABB information with the business planning information. That will do away with 2 documents, integrate them into one. We'll all welcome that, but more importantly, it will also provide members with the ability to interrogate the information more fully. In terms of today's report, ABB affords members the opportunity to give consideration to things including service demands, associated spending pressures, the emerging local and national policy context. So it's particularly pertinent that members give it a full review this morning, and I'm sure it will also feature as we look helpful to feature in terms of the service review documents which feature on this agenda this morning. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? Jane?
Chairman, yes, I do. I've got a number of questions, but do you want me to start at the beginning? Right. Well, the issue I think probably I'd like a bit more information about, or just a comment about, is that we could do with a bit more information on page, I think it's here, I've marked it in here, about workstations and workstations and numbers of people. Yes, it's page 23, and we seem to have it's not page 23, it's the earlier one. It's the Director and Strategic Management workstations. Yes, it's page 18. There seem to be 55 workstations and 22 full-time equivalents, or indeed 26 people. And I wonder whether that's going to come forward in the asset management planning, but I think that we need to keep an eye on that. That's there. I wonder if I could have a comment from officers on that. I've also got a question on the area framework resources, Chairman. I wonder if we could have the area framework at some stage split down into areas so we can look at the resources which are applied to each area. I know we get that with respect to discretionary spending, but we don't have it with respect to core costs. And I think that will be useful to see what is being applied, particularly since areas, localities are going to become much more important in terms of the way that we structure our our services and reach out to partners locally. So I think that would be a useful thing to see. I mean, I can't tell, for example, whether or not there is an equitable spread of staffing, for example, from this particular method of producing information. So I think that will be a useful thing to see. I'll start there, if that's all right, Chairman.
Thanks, Chairman. The member's quite right that asset management planning is a key policy commitment of the Council, in particular because it will ensure that we provide better facilities both for our staff but also for our customers, and we're committed to ensuring that we reduce the number of properties over time. And in fact, there is a member seminar scheduled for after the recess, which will give members full consideration of what that begins to look like. So in simple terms, we quite clearly need to ensure that there are the right number of workstations to match the number of people, and there's clear ratios for us to do that, and therefore it's clearly acknowledged at the present time we have an over-provision of workstations, but more importantly we also need to acknowledge the Council's commitment to an agile working workforce, and on that basis the point's well made, and happy to give the member assurance that these will be addressed in the year ahead. In terms of the area framework, more than happy, Chairman, that that is something that we can provide as a simple overview of the allocation of resources in the 4 areas. However, going forward, as members are well aware, we are looking at new arrangements in the shape of the Council. They are being put in place this year, and I think that in fact will provide the bigger opportunity for clarity on the resources that will be developed at a community level. So certainly happy to give that, but I would suggest to some extent it will be a historical position, whereas of more interest to members, I would hope, is the emerging picture, which will come forward in the year ahead. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Graham Bell and Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 24. Obviously, I'm going to be quite controversial here, actually, which is maybe not a change. What is maybe not a change. Looking at these area committees as an elected member for a number of years, maybe 7.5, 8 years, I think the whole structure needs to be looked at as far as I'm concerned with area committees and how we're engaging with elected members. Looking for one of the examples, we've had the police report at Nestle Area Committee with the fire service. These are centralised services. As an elected member, we can't actually make any input into them. We can maybe make recommendations, but I think we're powerless, and sometimes we're banging our head against the wall having these sort of reports. It is interesting to find out the facts across the region and across the wards, but we really can't do much about this. But the most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, on the area committees is the community meetings and that, because we actually engage with the public. As an elected member, should be engaging the public on a regular basis, and certainly I do. And I think we need to be listening to some of these people a wee bit harder at these community meetings. There's some very important ones coming up recently in the next few weeks or months. Dumfries Learning Town. The budget is a very, very important meeting for members to engage and to listen to the public. So I think we need to stress, we need more of these community meetings and that, but only if they're topical subjects, because there's members of the public that actually want to have input. But as for the other business meetings across the region, I think we need to look hard at how that's covered, because some of it's pretty bland, and it's just it needs to be looked at. The other thing as well, I'll come back on a different subject, is the EMS. A lot of members do use the EMS. As far as I'm concerned, it does work. But if a pressing issue, I've actually got to phone an officer because I'm a member of public or my constituent want an answer within 24 hours. So there's a lot of elected members who will actually deal with the kernel instead of going further down the ranks. But I think we really need to, we need to stress that when the EMS system has its place, but as far as in the last few weeks and that, I've been phoning officers direct because very, very pressing issues. So that needs to be looked at as well. But there's some food for thought here for you.
Thank you very much. I think mentioned at the last meeting, or certainly the meeting before that members are free to phone up officers as and when required, because there are some things that can't wait for EMES to respond to, so that's nothing new. I think with regard to your comments about the area committees, there is a meeting of the ad hoc subcommittee looking at the structure of the council and the business transformation group, in which your group leader serves. So I suggest you feed your concerns through him to the body that's taking a look at how we restructure all the committees of the council. That'd be the appropriate way to do that one, I would suggest. We can only deal with the remit. We can't change the remit of this committee. This committee can only deal with the remit it's been given, so the ad hoc subcommittee is the appropriate vehicle.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pass it on to our group leader.
Stephen, then Pat.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually just touching on the workstations question again, although from a slightly different angle. Looking through the ABBs for each of the different departments, obviously there's a number of workstations plus an associated cost with computer equipment and maintenance. And there's quite a great disparity if you were to do a sort of unit cost for number of workstations to computer equipment and maintenance costs. So, for example, revenue and benefits, 136 workstations, 279k for the computer equipment maintenance, whereas libraries, 84 workstations plus 140 public access ones, only 89k. Okay. This is in for each sort of, I'll find the pages just now. So, page 70, you've got the apportionment to budget activities for revenue and benefits, and there's a line under supply services and admin costs, computer equipment maintenance, 279,500. And then just prior to that, you'll see it'll indicate the number of workstations, which is 136 on page 66. And sort of going through department by department, you'll see that there's no, or it's difficult to find any correlation between the number of workstations available, let alone the number of full-time staff, but for full-time equivalents, and the actual costs for maintaining that, those computer and associated maintenance. So it was really just, there's no sort of consistency there in the sort of costs, and it'd be helpful to understand what the different costs relate to and why some seem relatively cheap and some seem relatively expensive. Thank you. That's my first question.
Thank you, Chair. I think the simple answer in that respect is that it's not just the cost of PCs that's included in that. If you think of revenues and benefits, they've got a significant amount of software and equipment that needs to be maintained in terms of delivering their service. So in terms of what's in there in budget, it's not comparing like with like. There's some areas of the service which basically only use PCs and they don't have a lot of additional equipment. Revenues and benefits is quite a heavy computer equipment user, so it's not the only cost in terms of just the PCs that people work at.
Just to come back on that, Chair. Yeah, no, I suspected there'd be something to do with that specific to software for that particular purpose, but it's just that for other departments, for example, for the directorate itself, you've got a cost which is greater than the number of workstations by hundreds of thousands, or by thousands, if you like. So it's just by department, it would be interesting to know what the reason for the variation was. I accept that there's going to be certain specific software needs for certain departments, but that wouldn't seem consistent as a single explanation. The other question just related to page 45, this is attendance and costs for museums. And just more of a sort of correction really than anything else, but the cost per attendance column, I think someone's gone wrong with somebody's spreadsheet there. The total cost per attendance is actually, for whatever reason, it's taken the sum of the figures there rather than the actual expenditure minus income divided by total number of attendances. Sorry, page 45. So what it should say is cost per attendance, £5 and a penny for Annandale and Eskdale, £3.44 for Nithsdale, £2.81 for Stewartry, the Wigtonshire questionable, but it could be as low as 82 pence. And for the arts column, it should be £3.80. So somebody's just added up those figures at the end rather than, you can work it out, basically. So that's just a comment for correction, because obviously this is the place to do it. And if that could be noted, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. We'll have a look at that and issue corrections in due course.
I'm looking at leisure and sport, and it's on page 30 and 31. And it's sort of apropos of the discussion that was had at full council, the end of full council last month. And it's to do with DG1 closure and the temporary swimming pool in the Lawburn Hall. And it's in the narrative here that it says that the impact to the budgets in 2015-16 cannot yet be quantified with any certainty. But, you know, the DG1 has been closed for nearly 10 months. And we do have a column which has estimates and, you know, tells us, here we can have budget estimates, which is on page 15 actually, but at the front page of the new bit of paper we got, for 15, 16, 16, 17, 17 and 18. And I just wonder why something that's been going on for 10 months, they have been unable to do any estimates as to what it's costing within leisure and sport to have these facilities on a temporary basis.
Points well made. I'm looking to colleagues. Don't see anybody rushing to come forward. On that basis, what I'll certainly give members an assurance today on is we clearly know the running costs for the temporary facilities, and that information will be made available to members. In terms of the going forward, my understanding is that DG1 will be the subject of a report to a meeting of policy and resources in the not too distant future, and therefore, if appropriate, that information could also be brought into that report as well, Chairman.
That's good, and I'm very pleased to hear it. I just wonder why you don't use the column of budget estimates to put in an estimated cost or not, or a budget, you know, because that's what it's there for.
I fully agree, and in my own preparation made the same observation, so I'm happy to accept the point and agree that that should be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, I didn't realise. It's actually on page 55 at the very top. I was just curious about the couple of figures there. The number of learners attending courses in libraries seems to have dropped. What are I was just wondering what the courses are that learners are attending. And the second line down, borrowers from public libraries as a percentage of the population has suddenly gone up from 13% up to 20%. Is there a specific reason why that is happening? And the third part of the question is you know, when we talk about, you know, borrowing from libraries, does that include DVDs and everything which is borrowable from the library?
Sorry, apologies. In the absence of colleagues from the library service, I'd be happy to take that point away, direct to the service manager for that service and get a response direct back to members.
Okay, thank you. I think we Sean, then Alistair.
Yeah, back to leisure and sport, page 31. Couple of points. It's not worth actually putting into the report, but I just wondered if there was access or if we could maybe be sent. Just there's 74 community facilities, including community centres, etc. So I just wondered if members could have access or sight of, you know, all 74 of those properties across the region. The other point as well is it's got leisure and sport facilities. 18 includes caravan sites, and then on page 33, again it's got caravan and campsites. My understanding is that does that include actually ones that are run by arm's length organisations? It's all the council-owned caravan sites, and maybe for future reports, it would be worthwhile just listing how many we're actually talking about there. I know certainly some of the campsites, like the one at Annan, is run by an arm's length organisation. Are those figures included in those, or is it just ones that are run by the council?
Thank you, Chair. The caravan sites that have a revenue budget allocated to them within the Leisure and Sports Service are the ones that are included within there. If they have been transferred to the arm's length organisation and that budget has gone to them, they're not included within these figures. But I'm happy in terms of the breakdown of community facilities in your first point. We'll get those shared with members in the district by district area as well.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. It's, Mr Crichton has already alluded to it. It's paragraph 3.8, sir, and I think that's an eminently sensible. In other words, it's taking sort of the two current documents at the moment and, as it were, obviating the need for separate documents for the future and putting it into the one document. It's not semantics, Chair. I think there's a fundamental important issue here. I would agree with that entirely. I think it's commendable. Yet when you go to 2.2, sir, we're being asked merely to note that work is being progressed. Now, those of a certain age, and I would put you very much in that category, Chair, in a complimentary fashion.
Ageism in this council.
In a complimentary fashion, I hasten to add, all know that you can note a report, and that doesn't necessarily indicate at the end of the day, sir, whether or not you agree it. And I would suggest that we should be getting more into the way in our recommendations and starting off here today with 2.2 when we come to it. You're not merely noting it, you're noting it and you're approving it. So that in 6 months' time or a couple of years' time, somebody challenges something, it's a clear, unequivocal decision by a committee on the official record of the authority. And as far as I'm concerned, every time I see a recommendation merely to note, you wonder, oh, is it really necessary to have brought that to committee if you've merely been asked to note it? As I say, it's not semantics, there's an important issue here, and I would hope, in fact, that we'll address it at 2.2 when we'll get to that, sir, and bear it in mind for the future. Chair, as always, I'm grateful to you.
Thanks very much. We'll do that. Stephen?
Thanks again. It was just actually could I just comment on page 33 for the David Keswick Athletic Centre, having done remarkably well to have a cost per attendance of 20 pence. So whatever they're doing right there, if that's something that we could learn lessons from, I'm sure there's probably good underlying reasons, but I think that stands out as something that of a bit of a success story. So well done to the staff or whoever's managing to achieve that kind of efficiency in delivery of service. Thank you.
Just thank the member, and I would be delighted to pass that back to the staff in question. That particular site, that is certainly an example of one of our best producing facilities in terms of capacity of the building being used, number of community sports hubs, groups that are utilising that, and obviously there is a desire to look to grow that even further if we can in the future.
Thank you. Any further questions? Oh, Jane?
Chairman, it was about the cinema issue, the Burn Cinema and the Ryan Centre, and I don't know whether the Ryan Centre has caught up with the rest of the world. Burn Cinema certainly hasn't, which should be showing live streamed performances. Annan can do it. The Fullerton Theatre in Castle Douglas can do it, but for some reason the Burn Cinema is unable to join the modern world and show live stream performances. And I am told that the equipment actually was purchased to do that quite some time ago, but for some reason or other, unknown to me, they don't seem to be able to show it. And I see that, I mean, it's costing us, I think, £2.60 per attendance. And we ought to be, I think, pushing things which other areas are doing. If we're going to provide this sort of service, it's got to be an up-to-date and desired by the public. I mean, the truth is the Odeon isn't providing competition, so I don't know why the heck we don't get up off our bottoms and do this for the public. Bearing in mind, as I say, I was told we have the equipment already. So I would suggest that we push forward with that one.
Thanks, Chairman. Certainly look into the matter that's been raised. On the face of it, it's certainly a bit concerning if that is the case, and obviously assure members that that will be looked into and appropriate information given to members, and as appropriate consideration given to adopting the opportunity that the members highlighted. Thank you.
Okay, final question, Andy.
Thanks very much. I'm not wanting to rain on Lee's parade here. Can I just ask a question about the Keswick Centre? Does that include the school activity? Are their numbers included in this, and is the cost, education costs involved, or are they separate costs?
They are separate costs. This is purely for the leisure and sport provision, evenings, weekends, holidays.
Okay. Can we move to the recommendations? And 2.1, which we have done, and 2.2, can we accept the amendment as asked for by Councillor Geddes? That's to note and approve. Members happy with that? Okay. Move on to item 6, service review, community neighbourhood services, report by Director of Communities. Oh, sorry. I did think 5 would take that long. In December last year, full council agreed that as a service review on enabling community empowerment would be undertaken. Please note good progress has been made, and members have before them today a comprehensive report, and pages 105 to 108 details the process and progress to date. In addition, paragraph 3.5 and page 93 outlines the key issues and questions identified for the review to consider. Decision for members today is to consider and agree the proposed scope and outcomes of the service review, and these are detailed in Appendix 1A. I just make the point that the commitment of this council to local people and communities being at the heart of our decision making, and the review will play a big part in helping us to achieve that ambition. Kirsty's here to assist with any question members may have. So I'm open to members. Any questions for Kirsty? Archie?
Right, thanks, Chair. I mean, this is obviously a very important piece of legislation that's going to be coming through, hopefully get royal assent this month sometime. I'm just, it's a big piece of legislation, and of course members will need to understand with at least a little bit of knowledge of what's actually going on with it. And I understand there's a seminar. I'm just asking the question if there's going to be a seminar on it.
I've asked Derek to try and set up a seminar as soon as possible after the recess, because I think it is something that all members, not just members of this committee, because it does affect other committees, all members should be tuned into this. Although we have been getting updates mainly to the policy committee from time to time, I happened to be in Edinburgh on the day they were doing the final part of the bill, and the Minister himself shoved in a whole host of amendments at the last minute, which has altered the bill in terms of what we thought it would be. It's altered to the extent that we won't decide what a locality is. Localities will be determined, if needed, by the Minister. So we can sit here and decide that we're going to call something. At the end of the day, the Minister can overrule us and say, I'm not having this, I'm going to determine what a locality is. I would have thought if you're trying to make things better for communities, the best decision-making area is the local community, rather than being decided by a Minister in Edinburgh. And it just worries me there's maybe a bit of gerrymandering going on here. However, there will be a seminar after the recess. Graham Bell?
And thanks, Chair. It's on 3.14. It's mentioned the community right to buy the land. Is this linked to the land reform bill? We've had a land reform bill published recently. Obviously, I've got concerns about the Mugabe style land reform bill. But is this linked to it or not?
Sorry. It is linked. However, there is a significant part of the Community Empowerment Act that is around the right to buy land. And I think, as the Chairman said, it would be presumptuous of me to get into the detail of that right now. I think the member seminar is certainly planned for late August, and we'll have technical experts for each sections of the Act that would allow members to get into the much more detailed picture.
Thanks, Chair. That's quite clear. Obviously, there's a lot of landowners, or a lot of people out there quite concerned about this community right to buy, and especially the land reform bill. But certainly, we need a seminar. Certainly needs to be investigated and discussed at length.
If you're worried about your vast estate, Graham, I suggest you see your solicitor, Andy.
Applause, my solicitor. Thank you.
Thanks, Leader. Chair, a bit. Well, right, you've not heard yet, but it's coming, right? We've got to look at this a bit sensibly, and I can't see any reason why there were 4 areas, for example, which have been accepted by the Scottish Government as our way of dealing with integration and reporting to area committees. This will come into the 4 areas. So I actually think we don't need the right seminars here. We need it in the 4 area committees, right? Because the implications for each of the different areas, whilst the overarching things will be the same, but the locality things will be totally different. So can we actually have them in through area committees and full council, I would suggest?
Well, the seminar will be for all councillors, I did say that. And there's no point in wasting, I mean, we'll try to, on a time of austerity, there's no point in setting up 4 seminars to do the same thing when you can get everybody coming to one seminar, quite frankly. And at the end of the day, it's not the area committees that will be making the decisions. The decisions on these various matters will be taken by the appropriate committee.
I'm talking about community meetings at area level so that the public can be involved, which is actually the whole emphasis of the bill and the new act. Community empowerment, not councillor empowerment.
Well, at the end of the day, if that is the wish, that is not something that we can impose. If it's a matter you wish to raise with the individual area committee managers, that can be done. And I think certainly the Stewart Area Committee is looking at its community meetings next week. I'm happy to take that one forward, as are other Stewart members who are present here, and suggest that can be done for the other area committees. But it's entirely a matter for the area committees to decide if they want to have an evening seminar. It's not for us to impose upon them. Councillor Geddes?
Well, I would like to think, Chair, that all 4 area committees would be given the opportunity, and that thereafter it would be followed by a plenary session, for want of a better term, detailing the recommendations from the various area committees at the appropriate service committee. I appreciate that we are under pressure. I appreciate that that's perhaps a somewhat labour-intensive way of doing it, Chair. But if we're serious, in fact, about getting the maximum amount of public and community involvement into this process, I think we've got to put ourselves out to encourage that takes place. And I personally, as I say, feel that it would be helpful, for the appropriate service committee on a plenary basis to have that information before it, because, I have no doubt that the perspective, for instance, in Wigtonshire will be radically different from perhaps elsewhere in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think that that's right and proper that should be the case. And I think that, I would essentially support Councillor Ferguson, and I think if we put ourselves out, we can achieve that objective and we can all benefit immeasurably as a consequence.
Anybody else? Patsy?
Thank you. Kirsty, it's just at 313, which is where the full council has agreed there's to be a centre of excellence, which slightly worries me a bit, in community engagement participation. Not exactly sure what that means. Don't know who's going to run it, don't know how it's going to be accountable or responsible to what it's going to do, and how it's going to be assessed, and how we're going to resource it, and if we need it.
Thank you. In our Chief Executive's reshaping of the Council report in December, he referred to a number of centres for excellence across the Council, one of which was a Centre for Excellence for Community Engagement and Participation. And in that report, he discussed where it would be, there would be an opportunity to have skills and expertise that could be shared across the Council and indeed with other community planning partners to improve particular areas of our business, in this case, our community engagement and participation. The model for how that will look will be formed as part of the next phases of the review, and options for that will be being brought back as a result at the end, the final part of the review for members to consider. But certainly, currently, there is no set format or framework for what a Centre for Excellence should look like, or the extent to which it would be resourced, etc. I think that's something that we need to explore as in phases 4 and 5 of the review before we come back to members.
Can I just vote? So does that come back to this committee then?
Yes, yes.
Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. I was sort of thinking back to what we've just looked at in respect of the activity-based budgeting. On page 26, it was clear that there has been a reduction in the number of community groups that we as a council have actually supported, which I think is quite interesting, because if it's really the case that they are down because of the third sector providing additional capacity to meet demand, I'd like to have a bit of evidence of that. They might just be down, full stop, because they've run out of steam as to where to find and go for help. We don't know that. I can't tell. So I'm sort of linking that activity, that actual fact there, Chairman, with the review that is set out here, the service review. And I would like to ask the officer how we would, I don't know, connect the two, because I think one does naturally lead to the other.
Thank you, Councillor Maitland. I think certainly as part of the next phase of the review, what we could do is investigate further how the council currently funds third sector activity and the level or quantity of activity that they're providing for that resource, which would allow us to have further information, if you like, in terms of the number of community groups that are being supported and indeed the number of volunteers that are being supported within the third sector. That's certainly further information that we can gather to inform the next phase.
Happy with that? Anybody else? Alistair?
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Just going back to the point that Patsy raised and Kirsty responded to, paragraph 3.1.3 about Centre of Excellence in Community Engagement and Participation in the Communities Department. And I was particularly interested, Chair, to hear Kirsty in a response make reference, in fact, to other public organisations. Presumably, for instance, that would include NHS, Dumfries and Galloway. Now, we're an area community committee on the 28th of April in Stranraer, and the issue came up. The chief executive of NHS Dumfries and Galloway was there, and the issue came up about the less than flattering report which had been produced about the Galloway Community Hospital at the tail end of last calendar year, and it had taken from then, as it were, until the 28th of April, as it were, for the people of Stranraer and further afield to be given the opportunity, as it were, to make their views known and express their concerns about a fundamentally important issue. And I would like to think, Chair, that this, I'm totally supportive of the concept, and I would like to think, as I say, that this, and its development and going forward, will ensure that that type of situation and scenario is never allowed to recur. Let me assure you, Chair, that the Chief Executive of NHS Dumfries and Galloway was told quite compellingly what the elected members of the area committee thought of the delay, as it were, and giving members of the public the opportunity to have their input and express their concerns. This is a big step, as far as I'm concerned, sir, in the right direction, and it applies equally to the Council.
Can we go to the recommendations? 2.1, agree the scope and proposed outcomes on Appendix 1, and if we go to 2.2, and we'll note and approve process and programme, and can suggest we take on board that Kirsty can go and speak to the other area managers about taking a look at the programme for the winter time in terms of the Community Empowerment Bill. The most important thing is elected members have got to be brought up to speed, and there will be a seminar after the recess as soon as possible, because there may well be community groups approaching us now that that bill has become law. So the important thing is education for elected members, and then we go out to the community after that and leave that to area managers to organise. Are members happy to do so? Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item 6, Service Review Community and Neighbourhood Services, report by Director of Communities. The background of this service review is the same as the previous item of business, and I would emphasise to members today the importance of this service review, adopting the key principles which are emerging from the Community Empowerment Review. I'm therefore pleased to note the emphasis placed on effective engagement with elected members at a ward level and the recognition given to involving local communities in the future design of these frontline services. The process and progress of the review to date is outlined in Appendix 2, and the planned outcomes are detailed on page 155, paragraph 37. Alan Mawson is here to assist members with any queries, and quite happy to open it to members for any comments at this stage. Members, Jane?
Chairman, yes. Could I have a little bit of assistance as to how this review will link in with the community safety team? Because we're talking about how to deliver and to link up certain services, including littering, street cleansing, and the community safety team has a real input into that. They are at the sharp end of the public face of what happens with that. So I would like to know, like to be reassured, I suppose, that there are definite, real connections between officers on the ground, and that, actual fact, the community safety team remit might extend to looking to see a problem and doing something about it. That's really what we're looking at. The community safety team, I was delighted to see, were actually providing services. They were from Stranraer, and they're providing services in the Stewartry for an activity. So it is obviously happening, but I'd just like to be quite sure that this review will suck them in. So if I could have some assistance with that.
Thanks, Chair. I think absolutely, Councillor. I think what we'll see through the review moving forward is that we'll see all the services that's listed within what was presented to full council under the civic and local services job description coming together around that table to see the synergies and how that'll be delivered across the board so that they're all working together. I think the review itself will look at detail across how the disaggregation of neighbourhood services will integrate with the rest of the services that will be listed within the communities, so that they can basically work together to deliver the proper services for the communities. Chair.
Could I come back, though? Because it's not completely clear to me in this review that we're going to tackle the sort of really difficult issues, which is that there are peak moments. We all have events that happen. We all then suddenly get extra litter, and litter things overflow, and nothing happens. We should be able to, somebody who's there, community safety warden, ought to be able to say they can see the problem, so tackle it immediately. And it's not clear to me in this that we'd be able to deal with that particular problem.
Chairman. Thanks, Chairman. The members hit an important point. I think maybe just to give members assurance that there's a lot of service reviews underway just now. The scope of this one does not specifically include community safety, and I think that's important to acknowledge. However, that's not to say that it's not being taken into account, as Alan has indicated. Full Council just last month agreed the new structure within each of the new 4 directorates, and part of that was the Communities Department, as members know, and within that we have now established the grouping of local and neighbourhood services, whether it's quality of life, whether it's civic pride, but it's fundamentally those services that very much matter most to local people and are very much the services that you as members regularly have consultations and engagements on and representations. So the wider picture out with this review is to assure members that these are all very serious considerations and will be driven by the new Communities Department, which we're in the process of setting up throughout this year. So this review is focused primarily on, as we can see, the burials, the street collection, and that to some extent reflects the previous silo thinking that we brought in terms of our structure. So it's to say that review will progress, it will take account of that, but the wider and bigger picture opportunity is very clearly the management structure that the Council agreed, which allows us now to group together local and neighbourhood services, which is all of these frontline services, and we'll be doing that over the next few months. Thank you.
Anybody else? Stephen?
Thank you, Chair. Just on the page 197 of 268, and it's got the Appendix 3B there with the sort of management structure, if you like. I presume as part of the service review that we'll be looking to be more consistent with how we're trying to avoid 1 to 1 to 3, etc. relationships, and that's what's going to be looked at. The second point is just on use of technology. Various parts of currently what's DG First have heralded the arrival of mobile working and tablets, and yet it's mentioned here, obviously there's parts of the service are using that, parts of the service aren't. So I'm just curious as to where the gaps are, because certainly some of the departments would be using the mobile tablets to sort of update their caseloads and inquiry systems, etc. And that, of course, ties into the Amazon experience for the member when they're using the EMES and getting helpful pothole queue emails, but no actual final closure on it. So is there a wee bit more information on where those gaps are in terms of the technology and where we are actually using it?
Thanks, Chair. I think first point, I think actually within the outcomes, it clearly identifies that the new structures at management and frontline will tie into the Council's new span of controls. So that'll be paramount as far as the restructuring of specifically the management structure will apply. The technology, I think through the initial stages of the review, Chair, it has identified that neighbourhood services are not at the forefront of using technology. They're in a position that potentially with the other services in DG First, they would catch up with that. But I think the luxury of that is that they will very swiftly be able to tap into that technology base that's there and utilise it under the new Communities Directorate.
Thanks, Chair. It's on 209 waste collection and that. It's just the thing about waste collection. Obviously, I've had a period of time. Last week there, I didn't have my bin uplifted, and I reported the bin hadn't been uplifted due to a road closure. I think the council DG First needs to liaise with the waste collection department, because a number of these bins weren't lifted for a week, and that's happened to me before. It also happened to me near the general election time, and my bin was full of litter from stuff put from my letterbox. But we certainly need to liaise with various departments on that one. I'm just wondering how you actually record this, because I actually phoned in to say my bin hadn't been lifted, and it took a week to be uplifted, and this does concern me. So how is that recorded? There's 42 people have complaints regarding the waste service.
I'll refer to paragraph 3.5. This is a matter for the EEI committee. It's just contained within our report, but it's no matter for this committee. So I suggest that you have a word with the EEI committee. Councillor Ferguson.
Thanks, Chair. Alan, I refer to page 197. It's the structure chart and grounds maintenance. There seems a hell of a jump from the supervisors up to the team leaders. There's 5 pay grades between the two. Is that something that you'll be looking at in this review?
Absolutely. I think, Chair, it's that the review has highlighted that there needs to be significant reviewing of the management structure from top to bottom within that. Certainly there's synergies across there, but we will be looking at that in detail as part of a restructuring radical look moving forward for the disaggregation of the services.
Okay.
Thank you. I was actually hoping it would be a bottom-up structure review. I wasn't talking about cutting the salary of the band 12s team leaders. I'm talking about, have we got them properly graded below that? And when was the last time a regrading took place in this service?
Thanks, Chair. I think absolutely through the detail of the service review scope, what we've said is we'll look at job descriptions, we'll look at staff training, we'll look at staff enrichment, all that areas will be covered. And the disaggregation part needs to look at the 2 services, one that will go towards the EEI, one that will sit within the community structure. But certainly within that, we've actually stipulated within the outcomes in I think it's the bottom 2 bullet points. One is to look at the structure of the management, but one is to look at the front line end there and look at the job descriptions to make sure that pay scales, etc., are equivalent to the job and tasks.
Take Patsy, Archie, John, and then Jack. Patsy.
Do you mind just a bit of a follow-up from Councillor Bells? And I'm pleased to see at 3.5 that the service review for waste collection will be a matter for EE&I, and that they will get a report at that committee on the 15th of September. Because we've got it here at CCS, it's taking up quite a lot of the appendix with waste collection and things like that. We must also go to DG First Management for the time being. And we also have a report coming to the Audit and Risk Committee to deal with this. But what and so I'm quite glad to see that it's actually going to EE&I and it's where it's meant to be. But what I kind of wonder, it's the last sentence in that paragraph of 3.5, which is to do with the proportionate savings. And I just wonder how that's worked out at this committee and at E&I. If by what you've just said to Councillor Bell is that actually we don't pay any attention to this at this committee because it's going to be shipped to E&I, what's the proportional savings going to be from this committee?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Gilroy. The arrangement is very much something that I'm in positive discussions with the Director, Alistair Speedy, on, and in very simple terms, we will ensure that both committees see the respective saving that has been made from each, so there's scrutiny of that, but the process to do that will certainly be a matter for this committee in terms of the neighbourhood services. It will be for EEI in terms of the waste collection, and in very simple terms, one would imagine that the proportion would be to the value of the current budget, and therefore both myself and Alistair are comfortable with that approach, and that report to EEI in September will set out that detail. Thank you.
Archie, then John, Simon, then Jack.
Thanks very much, Chair. I'm just looking at this whole structure change as a massive thing for the council. Obviously, we've had a lot of change over the last few years, and one of the things we want to do is bring the team along with us, the team council as it could be. And I just want to make sure that as a councillor and certainly DG First, that there's going to be changes within the department, and bringing the team along and making sure that they understand exactly what the changes actually mean for them is going to be less stressful for them. And of course, included in that is something that we mentioned yesterday at the training that we received for audit and governments. Succession planning, of course, is really important for all of this as well. And it's not something that we've been extremely good at over the past few years, although it's getting better, I would suggest. But you know, the sharing of the information of what's going on, the decisions that are actually made, how that affects individuals within each of the teams, is that going on, just to make sure that they understand exactly where the process is?
Thanks, Chairman. The point's very well made, and it relates to the previous review as well, and that's to give members full assurance that there is regular face-to-face communication in people's workplaces. So yes, we rely on the message going out through email, but more importantly, we need to, in simple terms, eyeball frontline staff, and myself and Alistair in particular are doing that, but also service managers are as well. And more importantly, we are listening and taking on board some of the very helpful suggestions that are coming from staff. And I can give members the indication that already there have been some very constructive engagements with staff across the services across the region. So reassure members, very much up and running and already reaping rewards. In terms of the way forward, the member's quite right that these are critical frontline services, and on that basis we need to look at different ways to deliver these, more innovative ways, and certainly the reviews are very much heralding that approach.
Thanks, Chair. Just looking at 171 at some of the things been reviewed, Chair. I've had concerns for quite some time, and it's to do with working with our partners. Since the transfer of land many years ago, we're doing stuff here to look after the local communities, but we've got areas of land that we're still debating, and nobody looks after them. We've got council employees been asked to pick up letting a bit of land, and they say it's no yours. So we're doing a lot of hard work to try and keep our communities clean, but there are other areas not been done. When we look at the first one there, winter maintenance and footways, RSLs don't do any of that, so it isn't done. We've got removal of litter in open spaces. We've got large areas where it isn't lifted because it's DGHP or somebody else's. And I think it's very difficult for us to do the job properly when we've got areas within our communities that nobody looks at. And I would like to see part of the review how we look with our partners. I take it there was no maintenance agreements put in place because we've still got areas where they're debating whose land's what, and we're not doing anything on it. And I think it's something we need to look into, because if the council's doing hard work to keep our communities clear, sometimes the only time these places are maintained is because we've got volunteers on it. but we don't have the capacity for volunteers to do it all the time. And it was just to ask, what is the responsibility since the transfer of land for the people that now own it to maintain it? Because we have a big problem, because there was loads of land transferred and it's all within residential areas.
Thanks, Chairman. First thing I would highlight is that this is the baseline information. So what we've brought together is the absolute nuts and bolts of what involves the service. And the feedback from members today, for example, from Councillor Symes, very helpful, because you're quite right to have raised that the council can do the best job in the world, but if we're actually not doing so with our fellow partners, we're in a situation where we've got an inconsistency. So first point is to reassure the member that as part of this review, we will ensure there is consultation and engagement with appropriate partners, particularly RSLs, and I think that's a helpful comment that will ensure is incorporated into the review. In terms of the current position, I wouldn't want to give an absolute statement today. I'm certainly aware that my colleague Rona Lewis did a lot of work 18 months ago in terms of the legal position with particularly DGHP, but not exclusively, in terms of what the legal position was in terms of the transfer of land, and I'll certainly arrange for that information to be updated and provided to the members after the committee.
Thanks, Chair. Appreciate that response.
Okay. Jack?
Thanks, Tom. It's page 171. It's the roadside weeds and the verge weeds. I think they're being sprayed far too early in the season because before the growth's in them, because the growth's coming right back up through. I mean, you just look in any area in Dumfries, the weeds at the side of the road. Whether the stuff they're spraying is diluted or not, I don't know, but it's certainly not as good as it used to be. Again, whether they're being sprayed too early or not, I don't know.
Thanks, Chair. I think the detail of that from members is it probably needs to go back to the review group as part. But what I would add to that is that that's exactly the type of query that we would expect the bringing together of them services under neighbourhood and allowing the communities make decisions on what they want is ideally what the review's all about, Chair.
Thank you.
Take Sean, then Andy, and that should just
sorry, Tom, one more. It's regarding the procuring and installation of Christmas trees. You'll remember this, Tom. We used to in Dumfries get a Christmas tree for the centre of town every year from Norway. Oh yes, we did. When did that stop and why?
Even I didn't ken the answer to that one. I think we can find out about that, but I'm pretty sure it's probably one of the reorganisations of local government, either 75 from the town council went out of existence, or 95 from the district went out of existence. I mean, you're quite correct. It used to be the gift from the Norwegians because they'd stayed here during the war. Yeah. But I think it did go into abeyance. We'll see if we can find out for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the main outcomes that you would look for on this review and any other review is to actually, look at resolving any kind of historic anomalies with regards to service, and going forward, it's an equity of service across the whole region. So just really want that kind of reassurance, because if anyone's looking at this, I mean, we know that the regions are all different and some are more densely populated than others, but if you look at the east in the three areas, the grounds maintenance, 27 ground operatives in Nestdale compared to 12 in Andale Nestdale. The waste collection, 27 in Nestdale based on 15 in Andale Nestdale, and in street cleaning, 16 compared to 7. So obviously it's more densely populated, but obviously Andale Nestdale, I think about 40,000, Nestdale about 55 to 60,000. So the looks on the face of it that there needs to be a redress of whatever the the final kind of numbers are.
Yeah. Be careful what you wish for. It may rebound the other way. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Is just kind of a general comment here, because I get really quite confused about all the comparator authorities. I'm talking about page 191, 193 and 219 here. We've got 3 different sets of comparator authorities. Now, this isn't just this department, this is right across the whole council. Right, we've got, can we know, is there no way we can actually get the same comparator authorities so we actually measure ourselves like in all the different things we do? Because I'm just to expand a wee bit, in that one on page 191, there's only 6 of the 18 authorities are Scottish, which would mean they operate under the same system as us. The next one is pretty the same, it's 3 out of 10, and then the next one is 4 out of 10. Now, I'm not being, anti anything else. What I'm saying here is social work and education, we've all got different comparative authorities. So how do we really measure ourselves against these other authorities? And that should be the measure we're looking for. It should be overall performance, not just, because we could be accused of cherry picking who we actually used to compare against. So is there a way we can take that forward?
I think this matter was discussed at the policy committee, actually. In some cases, we are told what our comparative authorities are. In other cases, we're using national, I think there was one in education where there is a comparison across Britain. The APSE one is a British one. There's ones that we're told to use by the Scottish Government, Scottish ones. But I think there's a report coming back to the policy committee on this to see if we can actually, the one that used to be used for donkey's years was the SIPFA one, which every local authority looked at. Even within that, it wasn't a direct comparison because some councils structure their services in different ways. Education was probably the cleanest one, but every other service had different ways of structuring the department and how they allocated certain costings. So you're never ever going to get a true comparator anyway, to be quite honest. I don't know if Derek wants to add anything.
Points well made by Councillor Ferguson, and your comments in terms of the discussion at policy and resources are absolutely correct, that members did express their concern about the inconsistency, as Councillor Ferguson has highlighted, and it is something that we will raise with both Scottish Government and through COSLA and other professional bodies, and as the Chairman has indicated, with a view to coming back to members with a report to the Policy and Resources Committee. It's as frustrating at times for officers as it is for members, and it's certainly something we would want to try and make inroads on.
Anybody else? No. Then we move to the recommendations. Right, we've done number 1, review the scope of the review. 2, done that. And 3, note and approve the process. Members happy with that? Can we move on to item 7, and that's the Galloway Viking Hoard. We have a report here. The report provides members with information about the Viking Hoard found Galloway in 2014 and the importance of discovery set out in Appendix 1 of the report. I'm sure we'd all agree that the acquisition of the hoard would be an addition of great importance and very considerable draw for tourists to the region. Therefore, initial work is underway to consider the funding to start a public appeal to acquire the hoard. Clearly, this will be a future item of business for this committee to consider. There is areas available which, if members have any questions, perhaps these can be directed to David Lockwood. Have members any queries on the report?
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, I think it's right. It's a good thing to have in the area, and we should try to keep the actual Viking Hoard within the area as well. But I'm looking at the actual recommendations, and it's 2.6 that I'm looking at. Know that officers are working to identify funding 100k from council funds to start a public appeal to acquire the hoard for the benefit. That's 100k for starting a public appeal. That seems to be a hell of a lot of money to start a public appeal, but also perhaps within that report we should be looking at, note the officer working to identify funding of 100k from council and other funds rather as just council, because obviously we've got to look at the budget savings that we've got to do within the next 3 years as well. That's the only thing I would say, but certainly would support the issues here.
Well, I think that's why we're leaving it. I mean, there is nothing in the budget of this department, there's nothing within the council's existing budget, but there are other council budgets that could be looked at, and if we leave that to officers to try and ascertain, because if there's money there, it's not the domain of this committee to decide how to do that. That has to be left to another committee to determine if they wish to do so. And it would be inappropriate of us to commandeer those funds. Councillor Geddes.
Thanks very much indeed, Chair. Interested as always to hear Archie's comments. I think we've got to temper our aspirations with a degree of reality. This is not a nationally important hoard. I would suspect at the end of the day that this will be an internationally important hoard. And the blunt fact of the matter is, I would want to see it, I'd love to see it retained in Dumfries and Galloway, but I would settle, as it were, for it being retained in Scotland by the national, such as the National Museums Council. Given it was located and found in Dumfries and Galloway, I would like to think that this part of the world, sir, would have a major claim, as it were, to loans, as it were, of the various pieces from the hoard. Just for instance, as happens at the moment in relation to the Whithorn dig, where you get the Bishop's Crozier and stuff like that. You get it from, and to be fair to the NMC, they have an enlightened attitude. And well, no, they have, and certainly from a Whithorn context. You go, you ask, and at the end of the day, you make your case, you provide the security in the premises, and you get. And it's not ours exclusively, given its importance. But I would like to think, as I've said, sir, that we would have the major call to make in getting items from it. But as I say, I think, you know, again, it's important from the point of view of 2.6. I don't think we should be off on a flyer in this, and that's not any lack of support as far as I'm concerned. We've got to, as I say, accept the reality of the situation and you know, the basis on which we will be obliged at the end of the day to cooperate with others. My big issue, as I've already said, Chair, is that this has to be retained, at the very least, in a Scottish context. And you may find, in fact, that other parts of the continent, of the European continent, will be seeking, as it were, access to certain aspects of this as well. So don't let's delude ourselves. It's a major issue. It's a tremendous find. I would like to think we can make the most use of it that we can. But as I've said, let's temper our aspirations with a degree of reality.
Then Jane.
Well, I would have to say I think we want to have an aspiration of having this collection in Dumfries and Galloway, and it was found here and it should remain here. I have no problem with it being loaned elsewhere all over Europe if it wants to. But I think we need to have the aspiration of having it as part of our heritage in Dumfries and Galloway. And I'd just like to ask Mr. Lockwood, you know, that in the report here, 3.3, you know, it says there are several hurdles for its acquisition locally. But in the first part of that paragraph, it says there is a presumption that material will be allocated locally unless a convincing argument for assigning it elsewhere is presented. So I just kind of wonder if you could help with that. And also with regards the kickstart for a public appeal, you know, perhaps we have to look to the stewardship a bit, and you know, we have area committee funds eventually. I don't know how much we've got left in them this year, and we also have a Kakubri Common Good Fund, which we could perhaps look at. I'm not sure. That's up to that committee and the area committee, and also the people of Kakubri, whether that's an appropriate use of that money. But I'd just like to know what the hurdles are.
Well, it's not a money competition, Patsy. All we have to do is describe how the material will enhance the interpretation of local heritage in the museum. We have to describe how the material will enhance a recognised collection of national significance, if applicable. And in our case it is, because two parts of the council collection are recognised, the Burns collection and the archaeology collection, which is a perfect fit. We have to describe how we'll provide additional conservation cover if required. We have to describe how we can maximise public accessibility to the material. Of course, the gallery is a perfect opportunity for that. We have to describe what we do to research the objects and enable others to conduct research. And for high-value items, we have to describe how we ensure the security of the building. And of course, this is an extremely high-value item. So none of this, I think, is unachievable for us. We can put very good arguments for all of it. The argument that the National Museum puts forward is, of course, it's of national significance. And just to say, they have indicated, Dr. Rintoul has indicated that if they do acquire the hoard, they would lend it to us in full for a short period and they would lend part of it for a longer period. So I do have that as a letter.
Well, I think we could tell Mr. Rintoul that actually he could borrow it from us rather than us borrowing it from him, quite frankly. The other thing I'm wondering about is, you know, the Heritage Lottery for the gallery, this secure unit part of the gallery is quite an important part of that application, and presumably they would be supporting it being retained in Kakubri, would they, you think? And is that matter Treasure Trove? Who are Treasure Trove unit? Who funds them? Is that a government body?
I think the administration of the Treasure Trove unit is the government body, but of course it's the body that acquires the items has to pay the reward to the finder. So if it is £1 million, then it would be the finder that will get the million via the Treasure Trove unit. In terms of the first question, the Heritage Lottery Fund, when it was found, we did approach them and said this is something quite fantastic, and would you let us include it in the plans? And they have allowed us to include it in the plans. They think it's a great idea. Of course, they want to know if we get it, fine. If we don't get it and we have put it in the plans, is it a fallback position? And as I've mentioned, the National Museum has said that they will lend it to us for a period. It adds to the flexibility of the building, of course, because we'll have a high security gallery, which we didn't have formerly. And just to go back to a previous point, I have actually offered it to Dr. Rintoul for loan to the National Museum, should we acquire it.
Yeah, Patsy's basically said it all. I think we should be aspirational for the region. I think what this will provide us, and as has been said, this is of international importance. The leverage and the bargaining chip that this will give the region, were we to get this. And can I point out that it would be on the back of a public appeal, you know, and money drawn in from elsewhere. So from the council's point of view, it is a good way of levering in external funding from wherever it comes in order to acquire a seriously important asset for our museum's collection. And that's the issue. I have no doubt about it that this part of this will be lent to us and put into the gallery. I'm sure that's the case, but that does not give us the leverage and the bargaining chip that this hoard would accord the region. And that's what we should be attempting to get for the region.
Thanks, Shane. I would say I totally agree with what Jane and Patsy have said. I think we should be seen to be taking the lead on this, and that gives us a bit of muscle should it be acquired by our National Museums of Scotland. I think we've had our fingers burnt once or twice, particularly with the Shambly situation. We should learn from the current regime in the National Museums of Scotland. And I think what is now evident, since we have 2/3 of the votes on the Kirkcudbright Common Good here, and I did check, they've got well over £700,000 lying around, then I would appeal to the 2/3 of the voting section of the Kirkcudbright Common Good to give it their consideration at a future meeting. And hopefully, in conjunction with officers, we'll bring a report back to a future meeting. Sean?
Just clarity on the report. Obviously, yes, it's a very important find, and if we actually can retain it in Dumfries Gullah, it would be great, but there is a cost and a number of costs associated with it. But see, in 3.4, it says that the council would have to start this appeal with a contribution. I just wondered, it seems a bit like an ultimatum that we would have to start it, and it would have to be a contribution, and in the recommendation, the contribution is 100,000. Is it not the fact that, if memory serves, the report we had with regards to Kakubri Gallery, we are making a contribution because obviously if we are successful, security required that Dumfries and Galloway Council would have to invest in the gallery. That could be, argued that is a contribution towards, if we're successful, to actually host the find. So just a little bit, it just seems to be we must have to start it with a contribution, but you could start an appeal without making a contribution, and you can actually, reference the fact that, we will be prepared to put funding forward if we're successful with it through the Kakubri Art Gallery.
No, we've already agreed, that was agreed by this committee and the policy committee, regardless of any decision here. And What 2.6 is asking us is the 100k that are a source of council funds that's just been outlined by both Patsy and Jane. The Kirkcudbright Common Good, and that is entirely up to the Kirkcudbright Common Good if they wish to make a donation to start off an appeal. It's nothing to do with this committee. Andy?
Thanks, Chair. Sean kind of stole my thunder a wee bit here, because I think it's essential to remember that the main project here is the art gallery in Kirkcudbright. And this is an added bonus, I would suggest. We didn't look a gift horse in the mouth, David, and I totally appreciate that. But if we were to acquire this permanently, the only place we would have it to be stored would be the new secure unit we've agreed to build at Kirkcudbright, which would then, in terms of the art gallery, take away the opportunity for the Monets and whatever coming back down there again, because that's one of the reasons.
Sorry, we had all this at the meeting last month. We saw the plans. This is a separate part for the art gallery. It's got nothing whatsoever to detract from having any other exhibition there. This was a secure unit for displaying museum artefacts. Nothing to do with the art gallery is a separate issue. And that was all pointed out at the last meeting.
No, we respect, Chair. Right, where are we going to put this if we were successful in owning these artefacts? That's the point I'm trying to make. And I think that was what it was the basis of Sean's thing as well. Well, sorry, I've misunderstood Sean then, because we have to be careful here, because do we actually want to say that these artefacts, hugely valuable as they are in terms of national importance and international importance, right, that they actually preclude, right, other things coming to that same building, because the reality is they're going to be in the secure unit at Kirkcudbright. That's the point I'm making.
No, if you were here last month, there was plans displayed which showed you we've got an art gallery and we found this extra space above the art gallery which we converted into a secure unit for museum-type displays. It's totally separate from the art gallery. And this was an added bonus. And this has been the area committee, it's been this committee, it's been the policy committee. It's nothing new. This has already been agreed.
Chair, can I come back in here? No, that's actually not quite right, because if I remember rightly, the conversation went along, it was in the last time we had money here, we had 3 men in a dug and garden it when it was worth millions more than what these artefacts are worth. So that was part of the debate. And the new secure unit would be to help house things coming from other things. But that's my point, right? We're going to use it.
I'm sorry, you've totally missed the point. This secure display is a museum's display. It's nothing to do with the art gallery. It's an add-on. As David said, that's why they asked the Heritage Lottery Fund, and they agreed that this could be added in. It does not compromise the security of any art display. You can have an art display on, you can have that can be a permanent part of the exhibition. You can have any type of art display there, from a Monet to local painters. It doesn't affect the art display. I mean, that was very clear when we discussed all this last month.
Just, for avoidance of doubt, that's not what I'm saying, Andy. What we're saying is that we have already put plans in place with the plans that are there, that if we are successful with the Viking Hoard, we have a dedicated space that will not affect the original plans of Kirkcudbright Art Gallery. That's the point I was making, but I was making the point that we have already kind of made a commitment towards that if we're successful.
Thanks very much. Yes, I mean, I think there's a sort of slight misunderstanding here. The fact is that it has to belong to an accredited museum or museum service. It would have to belong to that. And any money that was raised is for an ex gratia payment to the finder. That's what it's all about. That's what has to happen. So we, the council, would want to be in the forefront of organising it because we have to take ownership. But we have to raise the money in order to provide the ex gratia payment to the finder. And that's the way it works. Where it's being put is entirely separate. That's a different issue.
Any other questions? No? Could we move to the recommendations 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, And 2.6, I think we've sort of made an indication of where funding might come from. It ain't this committee, it ain't the central funds. But that's for another committee to decide.
I think it would be helpful, sir, to have 2.6 clarified along the lines that have been discussed at the meeting today, with particular reference to such as the Kirkcudbright Common Good. Because I think, reading this quote, you're thinking, well, council's budgets are under extreme pressure. What's going to suffer, in fact, at the end of the day, if we're taking this from council funding? And I think it would help everyone to ensure, in fact, that if this was properly clarified, and perhaps maybe even an appropriate further recommendation padded out if need be.
Well, we can't make a recommendation because it's up to the Kirkcudbright Common Good Fund to decide how they disperse their monies. And obviously, that's why it's worded that way, that the officers are working to identify funding. Now, if they put an application into Kirkcudbright Common Good, and 2/3 of the voting power of Kirkcudbright Common Good is sitting at this table, hopefully they will come up with some money. There may well be money available in the Stewardship Area Committee budget to go towards that as well. And at the end of the day, the full council has responsibility for common good, and therefore legally it is a council fund. But I think it'd be presumptuous of us to say Kirkcudbright Common Good are going to give us 100,000 or part of 100,000. I think adequately covered.
Chair, I'm not suggesting for one moment that we are presumptuous and that we make the comment, about Kirkcudbright Common Good, but I still think it would be helpful and beneficial to put in additional comments along the lines that you've just made, to spell it out quite clearly, the various possible alternatives at this moment in time. That's the comment I'm making.
I think we'll be careful here because, there's apart from the councillors, there's other folk on the common good funds, and we know that people can get a wee bit stroppy at times. I mean, I think we can leave it that way because the council at the end of the day does have the legal responsibility for any funds that are in the council's domain. And I think if we leave it like that, I'd be happier that way, quite frankly. Well, they are council funds at the end of the day. We're legally responsible for.
But the point I'm making has already been indicated that this funding could come from anywhere, as it were, to sort of kick off the process. The point I'm making is, I must admit, it's not my comment, it's my colleague's comment here. If you're taking out the funding of £100,000 to start a public appeal to acquire the Hoard, you take out the phrase from council funds.
So are you suggesting you take out the word council?
That's yes. From the phrase chair from council funds. Officers are working to identify funding of £100,000 to start a public appeal to acquire the Hoard for the benefit of the region.
I wouldn't have a problem with that. No. Okay, members happy with that? Andy?
I would just move one slight step further here, Chair, and you're right. We can't tell common goods and what they're going to do. So just to be helpful, could we note that officers are working to identify funding to start a public appeal to acquire the Hoard for the benefits of the region? That gives them the flexibility to go to whoever they want to go to. And then because if we leave that in, there's a public perception that the council are funding it. Right now, I take your point, but we are the custodians of common good. I think is your role on the Common Good Committee. Right? So I'd be happy if we just take out 100k from council funds, and let office give them the flexibility to go and do what they need to do to try and take things forward.
Well, I'm not going to die in the ditch over 100k from council funds. You want to take that out, that's fine. It's all semantics at the end of the day. So can we leave it there that note the officers work to identify funding to start a public appeal to acquire the Hoard for the benefit of the region. Happy with that? Okie doke. Thank you very much. Can we move on? Now, I haven't had any other business intimated to me, but what I will point out is, as you're well aware, we've had 2 committee meetings in the fairly recent past, and really the next meeting was due to take place on August the 18th. Bear in mind we've got the recess in between. There wasn't, I haven't discussed it with the director, there wasn't really a lot of business to come up on the 18th of August. However, there are 1 or 2 major issues that still have to be looked at. So I think we'll convene a meeting on Thursday the 3rd of September at 10:30 a.m. And that gives officers opportunity to get 2 or 3 issues that have been outstanding on the agenda for that particular meeting. So the meeting on the 18th of August is cancelled. That will be taking place 3rd of August at 10:30 a.m. September, yeah. Just trying to confuse it.
Thanks for that, Chairman. Yeah.
And I've got a wee, for